Hello YouTubes and Facebook. Today I'm just going to show you a quick tutorial on how to hollow out your print in Meshmixer. So we're going to hollow out this little Nazi zombie bust that I sculpted recently, and the bust is in two parts. Got the body and the hat. So I've already exported out the body as an OBJ file, and we're going to launch Meshmixer. For those of you who don't know what Meshmixer is, it's basically a free 3D program by Autodesk, and if you just Google Autodesk Meshmixer, you'll be able to download that for free. And let me just load up the model. So I prefer to use Meshmixer because it gives me a bit more manual control on how the hollow is set up, and I can do a bit more tweaking as well. So here's the model in Meshmixer, and the first thing you want to do is go to the Analysis tab and then hit Inspector. So what that will do is go through and check a model for any open holes or unwelded vertices or anything like that. So you see all these blue marks, purple marks. So this is where you might run into issues when you 3D print. So all you need to do is hit Auto Repair All, and it'll go through and fix all those for you. That's all done. So I find that this works better. It's more accurate than Zbrush's check mesh integrity. So next thing you want to do is go to Edit, and before you hollow, just double check the size of the print, because sometimes when you export and if you haven't scaled the model correctly, once you hollow, you don't want to hollow then rescale the model, because then the walls will either become too thin or too thick. So always check your scale before you do the hollowing. And in my case, it's 200 millimeters by 81 by 117, so 20 centimeters tall. That's what I wanted, so that's all good. So now we can go to Edit and then Hollow. So there are programs out there like Azura by Pure Poly and Chitibox that will do hollowing as well. But I've been using Meshmixer for probably about 5 years now to do this. Excuse me. And I just like the manual control over it. If you're a digital sculptor and you've created your own model and you want to print it, I would highly suggest learning Meshmixer, because it just gives you a bit more control over the automated process. So what you're seeing here is the internal mesh basically, and the ghosting is the external. So by default, the offset distance is set to 2 millimeters. That's pretty thick. What I want to do for this guy is maybe set it to 1.85. Generally speaking, for SLA printers, the bigger you go, the thicker you want your walls. So if you're printing miniatures, you can probably go as low as like 1.6 or 1.5. But for something that's 20 centimeters tall, I would stay within 1.8 or 2 millimeters range. Excuse me, put my gum away. And so the solid accuracy, the default value is all good, 256. But what you want to adjust is the mesh density. So if you have a look at the mesh that's been generated, it's pretty low poly. Now, again, again, depending on the scale of your model, you may need to tweak this to have more density. So we'll just bump that up to 200. And then hit the update hollow button. So what that will do is just remesh it so it's smoother and it's got more polygons. And the reason being is you don't want any sharp angles in the internal walls because you don't want to end up having to put supports on them. So that's not too bad. Maybe you can go up a little bit more. 250. You know, with these other automatic programs, you don't get these type of parameters to adjust. So sometimes, you know, you get what you're given, and it might not be the best. So look how much smoother that is now. So that looks good. Now we're not going to actually add the holes or the vents with this tool. We're gonna do our own. So I'll show you how to do that next. But if you just hit accept. Okay, so what that's done, it's created an internal model of what you saw before, but at the moment, Meshmix is still considering it as a single mesh. So you need to separate the internal shell out. So in edit menu again, go to separate shells. Cool, so now you should have this browser with two objects in your scene. And the top one is your outer skin, and the second one here is your internal shell. Now you see how it's got these black stripes through the model. That means your normals are flipped. So what I generally like to do is just flip the normals so I can see the model correctly. And if you go to select, and then just double click on any part of the model, that will just select the entire model, and then go to edit, and then go to flip normals. Cool. So now the normals are facing you, and we can now work on the mesh. So the second part, what I like to do is go through with the sculpt tool and just smooth out any weird peaks that may cause problems with printing, so resin traps and stuff like that, little cupping areas. So see that area on the nose there? So we'll probably just want to smooth that out. Now the brush you want to use is the shrink smooth. Don't just use the smooth tool because that will inflate the surface area, which will make your walls thinner. So you don't want to make your walls thinner because you've already made them, you know, quite thin. So it's okay to make it thicker, but don't make your walls thinner. So when you're smoothing stuff out, just use a shrink smooth tool. And then if you hold down the shift button, or the left mouse click button after you've selected shrink smooth, and just make sure you don't have light symmetry turned on. Sometimes it turns it on by default for some reason. Now what I also like to do at this stage is just rotate the model so it's in roughly the position that I want to print at. So I'm going to be printing this guy upside down. So if you select both the inner and outer shell, so you can probably do this step before you do the hollow, but that's all good. And then go to edit and then transform, and then just use the widget to transform, rotate it. Hit accept. Okay, so we're going to hide the outer shell again. Oops. That's better. So that will let you see where you might need to smooth things out, so you won't have islands over or really harsh angles. So we're going to go back to sculpt, brush, shrink smooth. So depending on the complexity of your model, this might take a little while, but it is worth the step to sometimes smooth out any weird peaks or any particularly thin areas that you want to thicken as well. You can do that on this step. So that's all fine. It's a pretty simple model, so I'm just going to leave it at that. What I might do is just smooth out, let's see, no, that's okay. I will smooth out these areas here. So what you're looking to do is just smooth out any harsh edges or transitions, because since it's on the inside, it doesn't need to be super accurate and detailed, and the smoother things are, the easier it is to print, basically. Yeah, maybe this stuff here. I'm not quite sure what these are black, to be honest, but it should be okay, I think, hopefully. Might be some normal issues again. That should be okay. Alright, so once you've done that, you want to then add your vent or drain holes. So I'm going to be adding one right here, and then one probably here, and then one big one here. Now you might be asking me, John, why are you printing this upside down? Well, it's because of these little tendrils on the model. I don't want to put supports on them, so printing them upside down, and since it's going to have a hat anyway that basically sits over this, it makes sense for me to do this upside down. So what you want to do is go to Meshmix and then select this cylinder, and then just drag and drop it onto the model and then scale it. So you want it to be inside this model and then protruding outside the model. So in case the cylinder you drop in is too small, you can always just select this, go to edit, transform, and then move it up and down if you need it to. So if you see that little S there, that means snap. If you untick that, it should let you move that around normally. Okay, just press enter. And then we're going to drop another one, what do we say, around here. Or maybe I'll add two here. So go to Meshmix, drop and drag the cylinder. And just make sure that the composition mode is set to create new object. You don't want a Boolean union just yet. We're going to do that as a second step. And this offset is just a quick tool to move it up and down. I want to just make sure that's sitting in there. Should be fine. Yep. And then another one. Okay, and then one final big one on the bottom here. Sorry about that. Looks like the police are out, cracking down. It's a bit of a riot going on outside at the moment. Okay, that's pretty good. Cool. So now we've got all these little vents. So we want to combine them into one single mesh. So just shift left click to select the vents, or you can do shift left click on the list here, and then go to combine, and that will turn them into one single part. And then what we want to do is fuse or Boolean union the vents onto the body, the internal side body. So we want to select the body and then select the vent and go to Boolean union. Okay, so there are a few things you need to check here. You need to untick auto reduce results and then use intersection curve, and that will just basically give you a cleaner and more accurate Boolean. So if you remember, in the hollow tool there was the ability to add vents already in there, but it doesn't give you these additional settings that you can tweak if required. So that's why I've done this as two separate steps. So again, you know, there are tools out there that will let you do this automatically, but if you want more advanced controls, Meshmixer is the way to go. Unless you want to fork out thousands of dollars for this program called Meshmix. Okay, so just hit accept. So what that's done is combined both the vents and the inner mesh as one single mesh or union. And then what we want to do is subtract this entire inner mesh from the outer mesh. So you want to select the outer mesh first, and then control click the inner mesh, and then go to Boolean difference. So again, this will give you much finer controls on how the Boolean is created, and if you're seeing artifacts, then you can increase the density or the detail of the Boolean. So again, make sure you untick auto reduce results. I always untick this because sometimes I've seen that it does some sort of weird decimation on the mesh, which you don't want, obviously, because you've already done that in Zbrush. So just untick that, and then tick use intersection curves. And if we have a look here, it might show it. So you see how that circle has become much cleaner. And sometimes if you use really small vents, then you may need to decrease the merge borderings, but in this case it's fine. So we'll just double check the top of the head, make sure it's all legit. That looks good. Bottom here looks good. Okay, so hit accept. And that's all done. So the last and final step before you export this out as STL is just to go to Analyze and then go to Inspector again, just to double check that the whole Boolean process hasn't messed anything up. So you can see the mesh is looking good. There's no little red or blue bubbles anyway, so that means it's all good. Hit done, file, export. So what you want to export as, the format you want to export as, say to get your file into Chitterbox, is you want to select STL binary format. Don't choose STL ASCII format because that takes forever to save. It's like 4 or 5 times longer than the binary format, and the file size is like 3 times bigger. So just make sure you choose the STL binary format and give it a name, H body 01, and give it a sec. Alright, so that was quick, much quicker. So here we go, guys. We have the zombie all hollowed out with vents added, and it's ready for support. So stay tuned. I might record a video on making supports on this guy. I don't know yet, but hopefully you've enjoyed this video. And again, I realize there are faster and easier tools out there to hollow your prints, but if you're a sculptor like myself and you want full control on the hollowing process, then I would highly suggest learning Meshmixer. Cool. Well, thanks for watching, guys, and have a good day.